Hey everyone, what's going on? I know it's been a long time since I made a video, and I say that a lot, but once again, for whatever the reason, I have some motivation tonight to make a video. And, it just gets overwhelming sometimes. I get a lot of stuff going on, and th- if you see the way that I decode all of the time, there's a lot of information, and sometimes it can just be overwhelming. You know, I don't just make it very simple and connect every single number to a cabal and whatever else. That's very, I could do that every day if I really wanted to, but I know that this knowledge is much greater than that. And I'm connecting patterns in my own life, and they sync up to the media stories, and then I look at the old information that I have and I see how that's related, and you start to see how everything in the world is truly interconnected and interrelated. And a lot of things that seem unrelated are actually related. And I feel like I can finally make a decent enough presentation to explain a major theme that I have noticed in the past couple months. And it all has to do with the Mandela effect. And whether you believe in the Mandela effect or not, there is a pattern that exists with the Mandela effect. And since 2019, I've been talking about how it's synced up to horse racing and also a duck theme, along with the Mighty Ducks and some other things. And I'll explain all of that as we go along. But I mentioned this in this Buffy the Vampire Slayer video in the beginning of November. I was saying how there's all of these themes that are seemingly coming back up from 2019. And, there was this Buffy the Vampire Slayer theme synced up to the Big Bang Theory, and, Penny on the Big Bang Theory, Kaylee Kuko, or whatever her real name is, she's actually married to a horse racer or whatever, an equestrian, right? And then she just recently got divorced from that guy back in September. So I knew there was something, kind of building up with this narrative again. And around the same time, I had a bunch of synchronicity with the horse called Omaha Beach. And that was the horse that was originally favored to win the Kentucky Derby. But the owner was named Richard Mandela. And, I'll explain this as we go along, but I'm just pointing out Richard Mandela. So think about that in relation to the Mandela effect. And this guy is even born on November 5th. I'll just put it up here really quick, but Richard Mandela. His birthday is November 5th, which is an interesting day because in a lot of time travel movies, a movie that I'm going to talk about here in a second, the time travel day is 11/5. Back to the Future, Time Rider, The Adventures of Lyle Swan or Lynn Swan, however you want to believe it, with the Mandela effect. There's also a movie called Time After Time, where the time travel date is November 5th. And this is also important, to the remember the 5th of November and so on. But think about time travel, the Mandela effect, alternate timelines. Just, it's an interesting date that this guy would have that name, and he's born on November 5th, this day important to time travel. And anyway, in 2019, I had made a blog post. Somebody told me that Omaha Beach was the favorite to win the Kentucky Derby. So I just made a blog post talking about Omaha Beach, and I looked up this guy, and I noticed that if you go from his birthday to the Kentucky Derby, it was 180 days, and his name equals 180, and horse racing equals 180. And this horse ended up dropping out of the race on May Day, right? And think about May Day in regards to Omaha Beach and D-Day, right? May Day, and then you got D-Day, just, Army codes. And D-Day is also Operation Neptune, which is interesting because Neptune is the god of horses, earthquakes, and the sea, right? But, I pointed out some other things too, like his birthday was 213 days before D-Day, and Omaha Beach equals 213, and a whole lot more. But to stay on the narrative, I blogged about this. And then a few days later, I made this there was a big thing with Jeopardy going on around that time too, and Jeopardy's been something very important to me with this knowledge. And right around the time they flipped the script, and then Zach's car got a car crash into his house, and then my uncle died in a mysterious car crash and all that. Jeopardy was like the biggest theme with all of that. And in 2019, we had the announcement that Alex Trebek had cancer, and then we also had this James Holzhauer guy who was really good at Jeopardy that was going crazy, right? And his name equals 63, and he lost on the date 6-3. And of course, on Wikipedia, it now shows his birthday as July 23rd, which is the day of Neptunalia, right? Horse racing. Or, just think about Neptune and horses, Neptunalia. But moral of the story is I just was looking more into the Jeopardy stuff because it was really big around this time when I talked about Ken Jennings and, some other things. And right after I made this blog post, I went to my email and I noticed that somebody had left a comment on one of my old videos. And it's probably the only old video, one of the only videos that is specifically talking about the Mandela effect. And it's this, I was talking about this movie called Time Rider, The Adventures of Lyle Swan. And what I was talking about in that video was that I had went to the Wikipedia and it said Lynn Swan here, and then later on when I went back it said Lyle. And then I looked more into it because I was like, that must be a Mandela effect thing. And because I'd never even seen the movie at the time, but when I started looking through it, I noticed that all over the internet people had screwed this up, and lots of people wrote Lynn Swan instead of Lyle Swan. And like I said, I'd never seen the movie growing up as a kid, so I don't have any real thing. It was just like I just noticed that this changed, and I made a video on it. So I get this comment right after I talk about Jeopardy, and I'm like, interesting. And I'm thinking about, I just, not too long ago, I blogged about Richard Mandela, and now I'm getting a comment on the Mandela effect. And then the next day, I was looking more into Jeopardy, and as I was reading about Alex Trebek on Wikipedia, it goes on to tell us that in 1991, he was the first person to host 3 American game shows at the same time, and he did this after he took over for Lynn Swan as the host of the show called To Tell the Truth. And I was like, so that's connected to the comment I got last night, to the Mandela effect. And then now it's connected to Jeopardy, right? Alex Trebek. So I knew there was something that was going on. I knew there was this pattern that exists with horse racing and Jeopardy and the Mandela effect. So then I made this blog post talking about it. And I talked about, in this blog post, I also talked about how when Donald Trump came out at his national convention in 2016, he came out to the song We Are the Champions. And of course, it was like 88 days after Queen Elizabeth's birthday. And think about the band Queen and the song We Are the Champions. It was 88 days after her birthday. Trump equals 88. The word Queen in Francis Bacon equals 88. The word Elizabeth equals 88. And it was also connected to Elizabeth Warren, Elizabeth-Anne Warren just so happens to equal 88. And think about 88 in relation to time travel, right? And Back to the Future and so on. And what's even more interesting is July 18th, when this happened, is the birthday of Nelson Mandela. And the song We Are the Champions, when I made this blog post, I went and re-listened to this song, and I noticed at the end of the song it doesn't say of the world anymore. And I was like, that's crazy. I always remember the song saying of the world at the end. And apparently the song never did that, right? So I was like, that's even more crazy that this would happen. He would use that song on Nelson Mandela's birthday. And then this song is important to the Mandela effect. It's important to Queen and so on. And right now, in regards to the Mandela effect and Queen, it's interesting because Queen Elizabeth is 95 years old and, Mandela effect and gematria equals 95. And Nelson Mandela actually died at the age of 95. So, or that's when they, that's what it's said now, that he died at the age of 95 in 2013. But a lot of people remember him dying before that. But, 95. Neptune also equals 95. So, my name is 95. There's some interesting things with this. And if you go clear back to 2013, I was talking a lot about Neptune. That was like a really big thing that I talked about a whole lot, and how it synced up to the Broncos losing in the Super Bowl to the Seahawks, and how it was linked up to Rihanna. And, Rihanna is from Barbados, and Barbados has, their flag has the trident, and Neptune, of course, holds the trident, right? And in Rihanna's video called Diamonds, she is like laying in water, and she's like making the cross or whatever. And then she revives a horse. Like a horse dies, I think, in that video, and she brings it back to life. And I was like, look at this. Neptune, the god of horses and the sea. And then you got Barbados with the trident. There's something going on with Rihanna and so on. And Rihanna also, her name equals 88 in gematria, her full name or whatever. So I knew there was something important to how Neptune was synced to that. Then we had like Philip Seymour Hoffman die during that Super Bowl. And they announced his death while a guy named Philip Phillips was singing a song called Gone, Gone, Gone. And just before that, we had Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air die. And like a couple weeks before that, we had a big story about Phil Robertson from Duck Dynasty saying that gay people were bad or something like that in the news. Duck Dynasty. And I'll get to why that's important there's a duck theme that's along with this. But I'm losing my train of thought. But the name Philip, around that time I learned that the name Philip actually means lover of horses. And the word Hoffman too, Philip Seymour Hoffman, his whole name, every one of his names had something to do with horses. And then we had the Broncos, the white horse losing the Super Bowl to the Seahawks, right? So it was all about Neptune. They even had that Maserati commercial where it said something like, "Now we strike," and it had the big trident on the commercial. I mean, that whole Super Bowl was like, they did like a big Neptune ritual. But trying to see here, just to make this smoother here, see if I'll skip over some of that, maybe I'll come back. But, in relation to this, we had Elizabeth Warren. She just recently got coronavirus, right? Elizabeth Warren in the news. And I made a blog post in November where I talked about how I thought Barbados and Rihanna might be important, or we're going to get a story about it. And then like a week later, we got a story about Barbados being ready to ditch Queen Elizabeth on CNN. And it's odd when you go to the video, like the video they show has nothing to do with what the story is about. They have a video of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle in South Africa, and like the video had nothing to do with Barbados. It's like, why would they put that in there? But Nelson Mandela's from South Africa, and South Africa is really important to that narrative. And on November 11th, I knew that there was this theme was going on because we got the death of F.W. de Klerk, one of the presidents of South Africa. And when I looked him up in gematria, I noticed that his name equals 173 in the Francis Bacon ciphers. And South Africa also equals 173 in these Francis Bacon ciphers. And in a little bit, I'll explain why it's important to a duck theme in the Mighty Ducks and so on. But think about the movie The Mighty Ducks that has the song "We Are the Champions" on it. And at the end of that movie, the second movie, they actually sing "Of the World," and then the film ends. So that is possibly why lots of people, including myself, remember that being in the song. But, just throwing it out there, I don't know. But that was important to this other guy who went to jail with Nelson Mandela named Dennis Goldberg. Think about Goldberg the goalie and Dennis Goldberg, but his name 173 as well. And then we also, right after this, so after this guy dies, and look, I talked about all of this, horse racing, right? So what are the odds? Then we get Medina spirit die too, right after this, or a month later, Medina spirit dies. We then got uh, the Omicron variant of COVID that came out in South Africa, right? Synced up to the Mandela effect. And of course, once again, these 2019 was also the year that we learned, or at least I learned, and I feel like we were all supposed to really learn this narrative synced up to the Jeopardy and so on. But we learned the importance of the Francis Bacon ciphers. And ever since then, I've been talking about them and how they're just stupidly important. Every story is important to these ciphers. And notice how Omicron equals 173 of this cipher, right? Suppose it comes out of South Africa, like South Africa, 173, right? FW, I'll just put it in here. Day clerk, 173. And they even said that the first person in the United States to get it was a guy named Peter McGinn. Peter McGinn, 173. And he was at an anime convention. 173. So the Francis Bacon ciphers just add that thicker layer to this deeper relationship with these things that are going on. But in my post where I talked about Omicron, I also mentioned how I think that the president of South Africa is going to get coronavirus or Omicron or something, because his name in gematria equals 219. And a major thing that I have been following for the last 2 months is this, like a drowning money water type theme that is synced up to the number 219 and possibly the date 219, which is interesting because that's during the time of Pisces, and Pisces is a fish, right? Think about water, and there's something important. I've been saying this for a while, and Squid Game was really important to that money narrative as well, and Squid Game was also important to that water symbolism. If you go and watch Zenith of the Alpha's video on Pluto and plutocracy and the connections between money and water, like river, bank, and make it rain, and so on. And I noticed that 456 days after Joe Biden's birthday is 219. And, the word president with a capital P also equals 219. And I also had this blog post about Ethereum on 219 of 2021, how I was saying I think Ethereum is probably going to, blow up or something. I just had a feeling that it was, because it was going to be the next big thing, because Ethereum is also called ether. And in Hermeticism, ether is the element that everything is created with, right? Ether is the most important element in Hermeticism, and it's also called the Akasha. And this is interesting because we just had Anne Rice die. Anne Rice wrote The Queen of the Damned, right? And the Queen of the Damned in the movie, who Aaliyah's character plays, her name is Akasha, and she's the vampire who created all the other vampires, right? She's the ether. She's the Akasha. So then we have Anne Rice die. And think about Anne Rice in regards to the Mandela effect. A lot of people believe that the book or the movie, An Interview with the Vampire, was actually Interview with a Vampire. So there's a Mandela effect thing going on there. And we also had the new Sex in the City, or whatever it is, Sex and the City, or Sex in the City. That new show also came on, so and then that Christopher Noth guy gets killed off the show, and then now he's like a raper or whatever, So they really want you to see this, but that was another major Mandela effect thing that a lot of people can't get over. So there's definitely a connection to the Mandela effect. And I'll come back to this in a second, because 219 is really important, and I had a feeling this guy would get coronavirus because his name equaled 219, this big number I've been following with all kinds of stuff. But yeah, I will come back to this. But I just realized something last night. The guy from the Monkees, right? His name's Michael Nesmith, and he just recently died. And as I was looking at this movie, Time Rider, again, it literally says that the movie was scored, produced, and co-written by Michael Nesmith. So literally, the guy from the Monkees dies, and he's the guy who like did pretty much every piece of thing for this movie called Time Rider that's really important to this theme I'm following with the Mandela effect. So you know what I mean? Like, that's exactly why that guy died, And Alex Trebek also equals 219 in the Francis Bacon ciphers. He also equals 167, which is the 39th prime number. And another reason that I think that date is important is because of it's 3 months and 9 days after my 39th birthday. And eventually I'll talk about this duck theme that's synced up to a drowning theme, because there's just so much to explain with it. But duck equals 39, and I had synchronicity with the Mighty Ducks 3 months and 9 days before Goldberg, the goalie's birthday. And then we got that duck boat drowning 39 days before Goldberg, the goalie's birthday, and he was 39 years old. And, he got arrested the same day that Alex Jones got kicked off of Twitter. The same day we had a story about Pink, the singer or whatever, canceling her show in Australia. And that's why just after Alex Jones lost the defamation case with Sandy Hook, we got a story about Pink having hip surgery in the media, because there's this related relationship with it. And I'll come back and explain that for sure, because it's really long. But I was talking all about this drowning theme that was going on, right? We had the death of like XX Tentacion's niece or something drowned in a pool in Jamaica. And then we had the Philadelphia Flyers goalie, he died from drowning. And I was like, that reminds me of Goldberg, the goalie, because in the movie he says he's going to move back to Philly, and he never moves back to Philly. And then I said, I wonder if we're going to get something with the Mighty Ducks and drowning. And then what was it? The next day we got the duck boat drowning in Branson, Missouri. And that's also why we got Jussie Smollett in the news. Jussie Smollett in 2019, Goldberg the goalie was also in the news again just before Jussie Smollett did his whole story came out. But when they started talking about Jussie Smollett orchestrating his own attack or whatever, we got another story about the Aurora duck boat crash that happened in Seattle in 2015. It was a duck boat that crashed on the Aurora Bridge in Seattle. And we got some story about them getting a settlement for it or something like that. And a whole bunch of stuff, and then Jussie Smollett, his first movie just so happens to be The Mighty Ducks. And I also got a YouTube strike on one of my old music videos because I used a clip of The Breakfast Club that has Emilio Estevez, the coach of the Mighty Ducks, and it has Molly Ringwald, who's famous for the movie Pretty in Pink, and a whole lot more. But just pointing it out. And I even talked about the horse stuff with Jussie Smollett, right? But what are the odds? The Monkees guy, he's the guy who wrote this whole movie that's synced up to my Mandela effect. And anyway, let's go back and look. So that president, his name equaled 219. I thought he was going to get coronavirus. And sure enough, he gets coronavirus. And he gets it 69 days before the date 219. And his name equals 69 and 219. And he also gets it 219 days before what would have been Nelson Mandela's birthday. And Nelson Mandela also equals 69, right? And his birthday is also 95 days before 219. And Mandela effect equals 95. Nelson Mandela supposedly died at the age of 95. Also, Ethereum, that was one of the things I forgot to mention. Ethereum equals 95 too. That was another important piece to what I was talking about with Ethereum. And my name equals 95 too, and I was like, man, I should buy some Ethereum. And then I don't have any money though, but if I did, I actually was going to invest in Ethereum, and then it went up like $3,000 since then. Or I haven't checked it lately, but a couple months later it was up like $3,000. It's like, oh my God. But what do you do? But anyway, so then we get Medina Spirit die, right? Medina Spirit. And right after Medina Spirit dies, the Kentucky Derby horse, we get the deadly tornado in Kentucky, right? Like, what are the odds? The deadly tornado in Kentucky after the Kentucky Derby horse loses. And notice in gematria, Kentucky just so happens to equal 219. Kentucky 219. But Medina Spirit, look at CNN gives me. They give me the story about Medina Spirit dying, and then just below it they have a story about South Africa. And Medina Spirit just so happened to die 219 days after the Kentucky Derby. And one day after Nelson Mandela supposedly died too, but 219 days after the Kentucky Derby. And it was 2 months and 19 days after the owner of Medina Spirit's birthday. So 2 months and 19 days after his birthday, Kentucky 219, 219 days after the Kentucky Derby. This guy's birthday too is also the same day that Squid Game released, which is interesting in regards to the money theme that I'm talking about. But now we recently got the death of Desmond Tutu. And Desmond Tutu, we'll just show you really quick and I'll explain something, but his birthday, he just so happened to die 2 months and 19 days after his birthday. And his birthday was 2 months and 19 days after Nelson Mandela's birthday, right? So this big number. His name is also 39, like duck, and a whole lot. But think about his name, Tutu. Maybe that's not how you pronounce it, but that's what it looks like to most Americans. And think about how next year is the year 22, like 2-2. And we even have the date 2-2-22 that comes on a Tuesday. So it's the 53rd day of the year, and a whole bunch of the stuff with the 219 came from that Young Dolph story, and Young Dolph was all about the number 53 and 219 and Super Bowl 53. It's synced up to the Rams. And I also wonder about the death of John Madden right now, synced up to the Rams, because remember the Madden shooting that we had in, what was it, Jacksonville? They said the shooter was from Baltimore, and it was all linked up to the War of 1812 and so on. But when that happened, I blogged about how I thought it was showing us the Rams to be in the Super Bowl. And of course, the Rams went on to be in that Super Bowl because it was all synced up to that. But we will see. There's also a lot of blackout symbolism that's related to 219. And, you know, the Raiders all year have been linked up to the Ravens, such as their first game of the season was against the Ravens, the team that played in the team that won the Blackout Bowl of Super Bowl 47. And, you know, John Madden just dies 47 days before the Super Bowl, and his name is 47. And the same day we get the death of this guy, Harry Reid, who's the senator from Nevada, who dies like in Henderson, Nevada, which is really close to Las Vegas, right? Think about the Raiders and Las Vegas. And there's a whole lot more to this, but I don't know. There's something important, but yeah, the Raiders opened up the season against the Ravens. Then when John Gruden resigned, he resigned the same day the Ravens beat the Colts on Monday Night Football, and the Colts are originally from Baltimore, where the Ravens play. And then when we had that Henry Ruggs car accident with the Raiders, the week before that, or just before that happened, the Ravens and the Raiders both had a bye week. So, and then now this week, the Ravens are playing the Rams after John Madden dies. So it just makes me wonder if it's linked up to that, you know, from 2018 or whatever. But who knows? I need to look more into that. But there's all kinds of 219 stuff that just keeps showing up, you know. The new Matrix film is really, really important. And I noticed that the old Matrix, the original movie, it actually opens up and it shows the date 2/19/1998. If it'll load here. Here we go. 2/19/1998. That's how the original Matrix opens up. Also in the South African Post, where the one with the president here, at the very end of the post, I actually went on to talk about how I wonder if there's something to do with uh, sharks, or, well, I wrote great white shark equals 173 because I was thinking about the drowning theme and shark attacks and water, and then next year's the year of the tiger, and think about tiger sharks, and think about South Africa in relation to sharks, right? Great white sharks, and that equals 173, like South Africa and so on. And the reason that I mentioned this was because the day before I went to the bar and really nobody was there, and I noticed this article about the Mandela effect that came up on my phone. And when I got home, I looked more into it because I was looking at it and I go, this is like probably the biggest Mandela effect thing that blows my mind. I don't know. The newest one, at least. But in the movie, Scary Movie, Shorty doesn't say, I see white people. They're doing a play on the movie The Sixth Sense, where he says, I see dead people. And then the black guy, Shorty, says, I see white people. And I vividly remember this. I saw it in the theater. That was like the main joke of the movie, you know? And now when you watch the movie, it really isn't there. And he says, I see dead people. And I was like, my brain cannot wrap around this one. I don't know how they did it or what, but it doesn't make sense to me. He always said, I see white people. I even asked the girl I work with today, and she goes, what? There's no way. And I'm like, yeah. She's like the same age as me. And I'm like, yeah. They say, he says, I see dead people now, not white people. And I don't get it, but it just sparked me to like look more into it. And so I came home and I was making this blog post, and I also noticed that they list 12 things on that little thing. And, you know, the headline of it has a picture of Jaws. And I noticed that 2 of the 12 ones were about Jaws, the movie Jaws, or whatever, right? I guess it's a book too, which way different than the movie. But, yeah, I don't know. I just noticed that there was 3 things that involved Jaws in this thing. So I wonder if there's something important to sharks. And I was like, I was making this blog post and I was thinking about sharks and whatever. And then I got up to go pee, and it was dark in my bedroom, and I tripped over a toy, and it just so happened to be the shark toy that was laid on the floor. And I looked around as the only toy that was laying on the floor. And so I tripped over the only toy that was in the bedroom that night, and it just so happened to be a great white shark looking thing on the floor, you know? It's like, you know, what are the odds? And then, you know, just after this, my kid was watching Scooby-Doo. I think he fell asleep, but it was still playing. And just after this happened, I hear the TV say something about the theme song or whatever was playing at the end, and he's like, when I go swimming, I ain't scared of sharks, or something like that. I have a clip here. I don't want to play it to get a copyright or something, but I then looked up shark, and I noticed shark equaled 219 in the English extended ciphers. And if you followed me over the years, the English extended cipher, it always seems to be very important when I have synchronicities. Whenever there's a synchronicity, if I see that the pattern I'm following is linked to the English extended cipher, then I know that I'm on the right track of whatever I'm following, right? It's just odd. Like, I noticed this thing with sharks, and then I trip over the shark, and then the TV says shark. And that's why I wrote that in that next post, because I was thinking about South Africa and sharks. But lo and behold, on Christmas Eve then, we got this story about a surfer who was killed in California but from a shark attack. I mean, how often do you really hear about shark attacks killing people? I can't even recall the last time I saw a shark attack story in the media, except for maybe that girl in Hawaii got her arm bit off or whatever, right? So I'm like, what in the world? There has to be something important to this. And I looked up California is 219 and Jewish too, but I went to the Wikipedia from the Morro Bay where this supposedly happened. And of this very small amount of things that it lists on here about that town, it says the film Murder by Numbers was filmed there. And I thought, man, that's interesting. Because we've talked a lot about that film over the years, Murder by Numbers, that has Sandra Bullock in it. and it was like, came out 83 days before her birthday or something like that. And the word murder equals 83 and also 38. And in the title, they changed the letters to, the only letters that they changed the letters 3 and 8 or whatever. Can't think of whatever it is. The only letters they changed the numbers in the title of Murder by Numbers is the 3 and the 8. And the word murder equals 38 and also 83. And it came out 83 days before Sandra Bullock's birthday. And if I remember right, her name even equals 83, but I could be wrong here. Yeah, her name is even equals 83. So it's something we've talked about a whole lot, over the years with this knowledge. And I was like, interesting. And the very next day on Christmas, I went to Netflix because we weren't doing anything. My girlfriend had to work like 17 hours, so I was just kind of hanging out at home and watching the kids. And I went to Netflix, and one of the top suggestions was this movie called Premonition with Sandra Bullock, and I'd never seen it before. And I was like, premonition, right? Like, think about it, following signs or having visions or this or that. And I was like, I'm just going to watch this movie because the murder by numbers thing. I'd never seen it before, and I watched the movie, and basically she has this premonition that her husband's going to die. And when she realizes it, she looks at the clock and it says, the clock's at 2:19. And I'm like, what are the odds? The clock is at 2:19, and like a big part of the movie, 2:19. And it looks a lot like the clock cat that it's in Back to the Future too. Maybe it's the same clock or whatever, but in Back to the Future, what's it set at? 8:54, I think it is. So who knows, but it's interesting, And the black cat also makes me think of the Mandela effect with the movie Hocus Pocus, who, the only other time I've really ever blogged about the Mandela effect was that Time Rider movie, the movie Hocus Pocus, and the song We Are the Champions. That was like the OGs of me talking about the Mandela effect, because I try to avoid it because it's really, it's a hard to prove thing. But regardless of what you think with this, there's a narrative that's going on. But the black cat reminds me of Thackeray Binks in the movie Hocus Pocus. And the cat, for my whole life, the cat was Zachary Binks. But apparently the cat is Thackeray Binks. Apparently everybody in the movie sounds like Mike Tyson. I don't get it. I don't ever remember everyone saying Thackeray Binks. It's just like, oh my God, it's so stupid. But, he's the black cat. And can't remember what I was going with. They're coming out with that new Hocus Pocus movie next year, right? So they're having another Hocus Pocus movie that has Sarah Jessica Parker in it too, just like that new Sex in the City. And that new Sex in the City also came out on the date 12/9. And that's interesting because Nelson Mandela equals 129 and a whole lot of other stuff. So let me find that really quick. That Sex in the City reboot. It came out on 12/9 and Nelson Mandela equals 129. The big story was that they killed off this character, Mr. Big, and Chris Noth, the guy who plays it's 129. And it's interesting, he's called Mr. Big because I had Synchronicity with Mr. Big and James Bond that involved volcanoes earlier this year. And then it was synced up to the Congo, and then we got the Congo volcano and that erupted. But I just pointed that out because the Congo is 129, and that was this big number I was following with volcanoes. And his name's 129, and Nelson Mandela equals 129. So I don't know. I don't know how that relates to Nelson Mandela with volcanoes, but I'm trying to think of why that's important, but I think the word horse even equals 129 when I think about it. Yeah, horse equals 129 too. Huh. Interesting, but can't remember the point I was getting at with this. Well, it came out on that day, and then it's technically the 95th episode of Sex in the City and the City, whatever it is. But now they call it And just like that, and that reminds me of Forrest Gump, right? And just like that, there's a bunch of memes with Forrest Gump, and Forrest Gump, of course, is important to the Mandela effect because a lot of people, there's the thing where he says life was like a box of chocolates or life is like a box of chocolates, right? Even though that one to me is explained because his mom says is, and then he later says was, but I don't know, and then people just mix it up. I mean, that one seems like not that crazy to me. Seems like it could easily be mixed up, but Forrest Gump too. Yeah, Tom Hanks has been real important, and Forrest Gump's kid in that movie is the same kid who sees dead people in The Sixth Sense, right? And then think about how I looked at that article, and the big thing that I was really concerned about was the movie Scary Movie, and Shorty saying, I see white people and not I see dead people. So I just feel like there's a relationship somehow to all of that. Forrest Gump and whatever, but that kid's also in the movie AI, something I've talked about a whole lot. Think about the new Matrix that came out. Because I mean, I really think we live in the Matrix. The Matrix, it just seems that way. It just seems so, dude. Everything's too perfect. Everything is related, too coded. You know, it just seems that we truly live in something similar to the Matrix. And I know a lot of people always want to hate on the cabal, and I agree that there is a cabal. Don't get me wrong, but like these numbers have other relationships, And I don't want to get on a big rant with it, but like for example, you know, Nelson Mandela 129, and the word Jesuits equals 129. If you write out Jesuits, it equals 129. But that doesn't, that was the big number with the volcano symbolism, and they're following the number with volcanoes on 129. Then 129 days after my birthday, we get that volcano in Iceland, right? Reykjavik equaled 129. And, you know, the night before, my son woke up, and he barely ever woke up in the middle of the night. So I randomly watched that Will Ferrell movie where he's from Iceland, and the movie opens up with him singing his song called Volcano Man. And then, 8 hours later, there's a volcano eruption in Reykjavik, Iceland. It's like that really doesn't have anything to do with the Jesuits, even though Jesuits equal 129, So if you just followed all the things that I've shown over the years, it's like, that's one thing I don't think a lot of people in the gematria community really get is, people like have very simplified this knowledge, and they see a certain number and just instantly associate it with the cabal instead of looking at the deeper relationships that possibly exist with this. And you can learn a whole lot more. And when you really do this, you take a step back, you can start seeing how, even your life is connected to these same things that are going on that you're trying to blame on the cabal every day. And it's like, well, there's all these other patterns that exist too. But people always take that as, I think that there's no such thing as a cabal. And, it's not the case. It's just that gematria doesn't necessarily prove the way that people think that it does prove it all the time, Not every 201 means it was the Jesuits in the news, It could mean the Jesuits, but it doesn't have to mean the Jesuits, right? It depends on the path or the pattern or the template that you're understanding the pattern with. We can all agree that a pattern exists, but it doesn't always mean that it's the Jesuits who are responsible for it. And you know what? Let me just show you. The other day, I was actually talking about this to myself in the car. I said I wasn't going to go on a rant, but let's just go on a small one here. The other day, I was on, where's this lady? I was going to Denison to get a chili Colorado at El Humidor. It's like my favorite food. They used to call me Mr. Chili Colorado even, but because I went there so often. But keep in mind this is December, and I went there, and I walk in the front door, and there's like an obituary up on the door or up on the wall right when you walk in, and this lady died on October 18th. But I'm talking about how not every 56 in my head. saying, well, not every 56 has to mean the Jesuits, right? And I walk in, this lady's name is Marcia Pope, and she died age 56. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Because Pope equals 56, right? Society of Jesus 56, Pope Francis, the, first Jesuit Pope. Marcia Pope equals 56 in gematria. I was in Denison, Iowa, too. Denison, Iowa is where I went to, right, to El Humidor, but Denison, Iowa, 56. It's like, what are the odds? And even more so, her birthday, or the day she died, October 18th, is the anniversary of Event 201, right? The big thing we've talked about a whole lot. Which, this is also 21 days after the Jesuit anniversary. So she dies 21 days after the Jesuit anniversary in the year 21. And the word Jesuit equals 21. And if you look at her obituary, her birthday was the day leaving 21 days in the year. And if you read further through here, you find out that she got married to Keith Pope on 2/1. So she got married on 2/1, dies 21 days after the Jesuit anniversary in the year 21, and her birthday's on the day leaving 21 days in the year. She has a last name Pope. The word Jesuit equals 21. And their only son, one son was born, and he was born on Pope Francis's birthday. I mean, you just can't even make this up, right? She also enjoyed horses, right? Think about this narrative that I'm following. And, this year is also the Chinese year of the ox, and the ox and the horse are the greatest enemies. Talked about that's why I thought Prince Philip would die this year, because the word Philip means lover of horses, and Prince Philip died. Then my friend Phil, who got in an ATV accident, he's paralyzed now, or he's actually can move his legs a bit now, but he literally loves horses. That's his favorite pastime, is he loves horses. His name's Phil, and I blogged about him in relation to Pope Francis and this horse theme with the numbers 610 and 106. And then I can't even remember it all, but what was it? I can't even remember it all. It was 10 months and 6 days after that blog post, he got in the ATV accident, and it was 106 days after Prince Philip died, and it was 56 days after his birthday, and his name, whatever his name was, it was that many days away from the Jesuit anniversary. And then he got in that, wreck 56 days after his birthday. My and his birthdays are 201 days apart. I mean, all synced up to the Jesuits, but I guarantee the Jesuits didn't do that. That's the point I'm making, is that there are these connections that happen all of the time, linked up to these same patterns. And we always want to believe that it's the Jesuits purposely coding the story and such, but maybe it's just something that's showing us a pattern to the Jesuits, if that makes sense. It doesn't always have to mean that, that they're responsible for that story, but there's a pattern that exists to them, if that makes sense, Something else is guiding us and showing us that pattern. And even more so, to go even deeper, this lady's birthday, she died 312 days after her birthday. And the word Pope equals 312 in Sumerian. And Jorge Mario Bergoglio equals 312. And Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits, he was made a saint on 312. Something I've talked about a whole lot. So it's it's crazy. And her last name is Pope, and Pope's 312. And her birthday, December 10th, can also be written as 10/12, which is a big number I talked about with the Jesuits in relation to my Uncle Barney dying. And I really think that somebody murdered my Uncle Barney, whether it was the Jesuits. The whole story makes zero sense. And he dies at the Jesuit Hospital of Creighton, and he was a 4th degree Knight of Columbus, and that's why 10/12 was important, because that's the day Columbus discovered America. But his death was also, that 10/12 thing was synced up to Dan Marino, because he gave me that Dan Marino jersey before he died. And there's just all kinds of things that were synced up to his death, right? But that was season 10, episode 12 of The Simpsons, was the only one that Dan Marino was in. That also had John Madden in it. That episode did. And that's crazy. It had John Madden, and I'm just trying to think, but that was when it was just before Super Bowl 33 that had the Falcons and the Broncos, and remember we had just had Demaryius Thomas die at the age of 33, and it was linked up to that too. So it was linked up to that episode. There's something to report to that episode because just my Uncle Barney's wife then died in 2020, right after the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. She's a big Chiefs fan, and they were saying that the 49ers were the Falcons in that episode. Like a bunch of people in the truth community were talking about that same episode, and then my Aunt Betty died that year. So that episode is definitely synced up to them somehow, but I'm bringing all of this up just because of the fact that this lady is, she's from Odebo, Iowa, and my uncle, he got in a car wreck just before he got to Odebo, Iowa, and that's where their mascot is the Falcon, and remember after my uncle died, the Falcons then went on to go to the Super Bowl, right? And then they lost that scripted 25-point comeback on 2-5 and so on. But there was all kinds of stuff that were from the Miami Dolphins things that were linking up to the Atlanta Falcons, right? And even the Dolphins quarterbacks were like Matt Moore and Ryan Tannehill, and then Matt Ryan was the Falcons quarterback who went on to be in the Super Bowl, right? And he went to the Jesuit school. And I'm telling you, then the same day my uncle dies, I get a letter in the mail with $300 in it that was express shipped to get to my house. And they spent like $25 to express ship it and basically tell me I need to just believe in God. That is the craziest shit in the world. Like, I mean, I still don't know. I don't know what I fully believe with it, but it sure seems that my uncle got murdered, by the Jesuits, right? But possibly there was just something that wanted me to believe that too, I always try to keep an open mind, but it's interesting, But I mean, it still stands. The point I'm making is that, every time you see a 56, it doesn't necessarily have to mean it's Society of Jesus. There's so many other like patterns and narratives that you can follow to understand this, right? And I'm not disagreeing that there's a cabal that exists and that Jesuits are part of it. But when you really take a step back, you're going to see that everything in your life is coded this way. Just like Zach and his bear spray incident that never really gets talked about, I mean, crazy shit, Like, it's just absolutely crazy. But it all happened exactly by the numbers. And, that whole thing was crazy too, because it was all about 33. And then he made the video like a week later talking about how Sweet Lady, he calls her that, his girlfriend Sweet Lady from the Tyrese song, and Sweet Lady equals 33. And she's from Myanmar. And then we got the Myanmar coup like a couple days after that. And I knew that it was somehow related to her, but I didn't know what her name was or her birthday or anything like that. And then 33 weeks after Zach's birthday, there was a story on Yahoo about Winston from Mumford & Sons quitting the band because he supported Andy No. And that's who Zach went there to, the bear spray thing. He went there to protest Andy No. And Winston instantly reminded me of the book 1984 because the character's name is Winston, but from years, we've talked about how Winston equals 33. So I was like, what are the odds? Winston, Andy No, and 33. It's something synced up to 1984. And then in June that year, I found out that Zach made a video and he said that his girlfriend was born the same day as George Orwell, the guy who wrote 1984. And that birthday just so happens to be 3 months and 3 days, a span before the Jesuit anniversary. It's like, I mean, that's some crazy stuff. And then, of course, George Orwell is also like lived in Myanmar, and one of his first books is all about Myanmar. So it's like, dude, there's a deeper relationship and there's something else that's guiding us with this knowledge. And a lot of people don't realize that we too are being manipulated. And I really didn't want to get on this rant, but I just, it's part of my frustration of why I don't want to make videos a lot of times, because I feel like I'm talking to a brick wall, because it just seems like there's too many people who don't want to hear this. And I'm not trying to be mean or start drama. I'm just trying to be real and like, show that this exists, because I think a lot of people are they think that the organic stuff is just something that happens every once in a while, but literally it happens all of the time, you know? And the whole point I'm saying is that this lady stupidly coded to the Jesuits, but that doesn't necessarily mean that lady, you know, died from the Jesuits. Just as we see all these people dying in connection to sports championships and so on, but that also happens in my own life. I've talked about it millions of times, you know? Like after my Uncle Barney died, my I went to my grandma Murphy's after my Uncle Barney died, and after the Falcons lost in the Super Bowl. I was at my grandma's house, and the only people that were there were my sister, my mom, my Uncle Clancy, me, and my grandma. And I found out that day that my Uncle Barney died from injuries from his car wreck. He had cancer, but he died from injury. He didn't die from cancer. He died from his car wreck. And I was like, well, that's crazy weird. And because I thought he just like had a seizure or something from his cancer or whatever. But it turns out he actually just died from the car wreck. But that same day, I learned that my sister lived on Falcon Avenue. She lives like an hour away. I've only been to her house a couple of times. And she lived on Falcon Avenue, and she owned a company called Eagle Acres. And I thought that was interesting because my grandma lived on Eagle Street. And my Uncle Clancy, who was there, his son named Ryan is the only Philadelphia Eagles fan that I know in my life. And a month before that, there was that Fort Lauderdale airport shooting. It was right next to where my cousin Ryan lived. And I talked about how he was synced up to some stuff. And I was like, man, I wonder if the Eagles are important, you know? And I followed that narrative all year. My grandma ends up dying on September 24th before the Eagles win the Super Bowl. It was the day after Donald Trump called out the kneeling and so on. It turned out to be Nicholas Cruz, his birthday, the guy who supposedly shot up the Stoneman Douglas Eagles. And it was really related to that. But then on Christmas Eve, my Uncle Clancy's lung collapsed, and he ended up dying a couple months after the Super Bowl, where the Eagles won the Super Bowl. And what's even funnier is my sister was there, and my sister, the town that she lives in, Audubon, Iowa, they were featured in a Super Bowl commercial that year. I didn't know about that until like it got closer to the Super Bowl, but they have this giant bull statue in the town. So the commercial was about how they had the giant bull and they were on the Super Bowl or something like that. And when I looked up the town, it was actually founded by a guy named like James Audubon or John Audubon. And he was famous for writing a book called The Birds of America. And what's the Birds of America? It's an eagle, right? And then 42 days later, a girl with the name 40, the Eagles 42 in Gematria from that town, who was like 5 or some years old, she fell in the river and died at like the Sioux Falls River. And in the story, it said that the last time somebody died there was a guy named Lyle Eagletail, you know, and then 131 days after that, some other kid that my sister took care of at the school, he died. And Super Bowl equals 131 and a whole bunch more, you know. We want to think that all these celebrities are getting sacrificed and murdered, but this stuff is happening all over the world, you know. It's happening every day, synced up to sports championships and whatever else. And, you know, I know for a fact my grandma didn't get murdered. I mean, I was there when she died, you know. I know that my Uncle Clancy didn't get murdered, but it's very odd how all of a sudden he gets a collapsed lung and so on, you know. So I can't vouch for the girl because I didn't know that young girl, but, you know, there's something deeper to this knowledge. And I understand the point of what people are saying, but I wish more people would look deeper into this and realize that when some of the things they're doing aren't necessarily proved by what they think they're proving, you know, if that makes sense. And that's all I want. I mean, dude, all seeing eyes and movies and, you know, the 33 pillars outside the Freemason headquarters in Washington, D.C. that are 33 feet tall and so on, right? Dude, it's so obvious there's something, you know, there's people who understand this knowledge, people using this knowledge, but at the same time, there's like more to this knowledge that can be learned. And a lot of people are just stopping at like, you know, a lower level and not getting this deeper understanding as well. Like one more example, or just maybe even a couple. But back in September, I saw my friend from Tampa Bay. He was like randomly in town, and he's actually married to John Bon Jovi's cousin, and they were talking about how his mom was sick, and I blogged about it because around that same time we had the death of Eric Cowie from Tiger King, and it was all about Tampa Bay, and my friend was from Tampa, and it was just interesting too. I don't see him that often. I ran into him randomly, and then they were talking about John Bon Jovi and so on, and so I blogged about it, and then 54 days later, John Bon Jovi turned out to have coronavirus, right? And in gematria, John Bon Jovi just so happens to equal 54, and also 144. And, what are the odds that 54 days later there's a story in the news about John Bon Jovi having coronavirus? And a lot of people would connect this to Jesuit order. They would say Jesuit order, right? And then, John Bon Jovi's name is a Italian name, right? So Italy, the Vatican, right? And then he got it 35 days after the Jesuit anniversary, and the word Catholic equals 35. Okay, I guess I understand this, but in my head, I'm like, dude, no, it's got to be connected to my experience, because it was 54 days later, his name equals 54. And, sure enough, John Bon Jovi also equals 222 in these Francis Bacon ciphers. And my friend's wife, her name equals 222. And her birthday just so happens to be 222 days before or after John Bon Jovi got coronavirus, and also 144 days the other way, right? So I'm like, so his name equals that, and it's linked up to my friend's wife, and her maiden name equals 222, and my friend is Anthony Darvaux. Let's type it in here. Well, that's how he has it on Facebook. My whole life I've called him Tony. But his name, 222. And also 53, right? The 53rd day is even 222. He's a humongous Nebraska Cornhusker fan. And, geez, I can't type, but Nebraska Cornhuskers equal 222. It's like, and this was right after I just talked about Chris Farley and the movie Tommy Boy with the number 239 on the book, right? That is really synced up to the Jesuits. Absolutely. They did that on purpose. I guarantee that. Marquette, the Jesuit University, right? Marquette 239. Society of Jesus equals 239, and a whole lot more. That's why Pope Francis came to the United States in the 239th year of the United States, and Paris, France equals 239, Illuminati 239, and think about the Jesuits and the Illuminati and a whole lot more. I don't want to go into the big old spiel, but the moral of the story was that narrative. Somebody else pointed out that later on the book it has 241 on it. Well, that's the 53rd prime number, and that's like a humongous thing that I was following with the Nebraska narrative, because Sandusky, Ohio equals 53, and the letters N is breaks down to 5, and U breaks down to 3, 5, 3, and in 2015, the big narrative that I was following with that, we got the actor Dean Jones died, and he was in Herbie the Love Bug, that car that drives number 53, but Nebraska's mascot is Herbie, and there was a bunch of stories about Nebraska and their PA announcer and a whole bunch of stuff. The PA, like Pennsylvania, and Nebraska was the first team to play Penn State after the Jerry Sandusky stuff, and Tommy Boy set in Sandusky, Ohio, and whatever, a whole bunch of stuff. But I looked up Penn State founded on 222, But I'm just pointing out the narrative, John Bon, it's bigger, You could connect it to Jesuit order, but, in a way that's kind of just making up a phrase. But, it doesn't have to mean that, is the point that I'm getting at. It doesn't have to just mean Jesuit order. There's a lot more that is going on with how it's related. And yeah, You know, who knows? Maybe the Jesuits, I don't know. Maybe it was. I'm not denying, I'm not saying that that isn't what that means. Possibly it does mean that, you know? But it also means all these other things that people are missing because they just see Jesuit order and just move on with it, you know? And there's really, I mean, really, when you really look at how deep this is, we're never going to just get enough people awake and go and murder all the Jesuits and Freemasons and whatever and just take over this world and take it back, because all of that's going to happen by a code, and then the world's still going to exist by a code. So we need to figure out how, like, more of what this world really is and what this knowledge is, you know, versus like every day just being angry at the cabal. It's like, I actually kind of think it's funny anymore, you know? It's like, I mean, it sounds sad, but it's just deeper than like what most people are seeing in the gematria community. Not everybody, you know, but it does get frustrating because I get talked crap on, and it's like, but people just aren't at that same level. They're not understanding what I am saying. But I'll just move on, you know. Let's go back to the Mandela effect stuff. I mean, I got a million other examples, you know. I blogged about just weird stuff. I mean, like, I wondered if Nick Cannon was going to be important back in September because of like weird stuff that happened to me at work with the song Fancy, and Fancy equals 86, and turned out to be 86 days after Iggy Azalea's birthday, to the lady who wrote the song Fancy. And she used to date Swaggy P, right? Swaggy P, the basketball player, who I always mix up with Nick Cannon because his name's Nick Young and they look a lot alike. But Swaggy P equals 98, and so does Nick Cannon. And then 98 days after my blog post, we got a story about Nick Cannon's son dying, you know? I mean, just there's countless other examples of this happening. And it's like, you know, other people might connect that 98 to, they might say, oh, that means the Jesuit motto or something. You know what I mean? It's like, well, that doesn't necessarily prove it, you know? It's just like the number 86, right? Yeah, blood sacrifice equals 86, but you know, that doesn't always have to mean that, you know? Just because someone dies at the age of 86 or because their name equals 86 doesn't prove they were blood sacrificed, you know? There's other things that it could be. You're just wild guessing because there's a pattern with death and so on. And you have the belief that everybody's being murdered, right? And we don't we don't for sure know that that's what's going on. It could just be some of these random organic things, right? And I mean, there is a song called Murder by Numbers, right? By the Police, but that song is also on the album called Synchronicity, right? So, I mean, there's more to learn. You can't just say, "Oh yeah, Murder by Numbers," and then leave out all the parts about synchronicity involved in that, you know, that album. So, I mean, otherwise you're not being, you know, that truthful, you know. So, that's all I'm trying to do. I don't even care. I'm trying to be truthful because I'm trying to like figure it out myself, you know. I don't want to like be one-sided and just do this to, you know, to make money, because I obviously don't, but I'm just saying, like, I could easily like decode in a very minuscule way every day and, you know, just be like, oh yeah, it's the cabal and blah blah blah, and tons of people would follow me, and I could, you know, make videos like, we gotta fucking take these people down and whatever, you know. And people enjoy that shit because that's, people are entertained, you know, with, even in the truth community. And even the Matrix. I really didn't want to get this far off topic, but even like the movie The Matrix, right? Watch the movies The Matrix, like all of them. And like the second or third one, he finds out from the architect that the AI or the robots or whatever, they actually created Zion and they allowed people to be awake, right? Like, and then they like use them throughout the movie. Like they guide them to certain things because they want them to do certain things. Like, you know, Neo he has to go to the source and whatever else, right? So and then they destroy Zion every, what, 100 years or something, right? So they literally like still control the people who are awake. right? They let people be awake, but then they still like rule over them to an extent, you know? And I feel like that's exactly what's going on in this world. It's like, even with the gematria, right? They let us think that we're awake. But I mean, when you really look at it, how they flipped the script, and then we learned reverse gematria, and then the same thing happened in 2019 with the Tisha B'Av stuff. We got Jeopardy stuff again, and I kept saying, hey, I think we're just going to learn like a new cipher. Or there's something important that we're going to learn. We're going to learn something deeper with this knowledge. And I learned about the Francis Bacon ciphers, and here I am today still explaining it. And that's what I think is going to happen with August 6th of 2022. There's a lot of things related to it. This big day I keep following, and I think that day is important to something similar to this. There's, I've already learned a whole lot about the Fibonacci stuff with it, and I didn't even realize that I even coded the book to that. So it's probably something to do with that, but I have a feeling that if there's not like a big bad event that goes on, that's just another one of these like learning things that are going on with this knowledge, so. But you're never going to see that if you don't just take a step back and try to understand like the patterns that exist in your life and how they link up to the media, and try to understand your memories and your old information and understand how all these patterns come together. So rant over. So I'm going to go back. I want to go back and explain and talk about a lot of this stuff, because the duck theme is really, really important. And we also had the guy from Queen, right? Brian May. He got coronavirus, and then he begged the fans to get vaccinated and stuff. And of course, think about We Are the Champions, how that's important to this. And I'll explain it, but you know what? This guy's name equals 219. Brian Harold May, 219. And the new lead singer for Queen is Adam Lambert. And Adam Lambert, his birthday just so happens to be 129, like Nelson Mandela. And his birthday is also 219 days before Freddie Mercury's birthday. That's on 9/5, right? Think about Mandela effect equaling 95. Think about, Nelson Mandela supposedly dying at age 95. Think about in 2020, because of coronavirus, how they moved the Kentucky Derby to the date 9/5. And also that summer, we got the death of Nelson Mandela's daughter, Zinzi Mandela. She was like the ambassador to Denmark as well. And that was really important to the 2019 Tisha B'Av narrative that was all linked up to this. But let's go back here. I'm going to go back to 2019 and look at these things that were going on. So I showed how it all began with Omaha Beach and Richard Mandela, which, even to go further. So when we got the story about Elizabeth Warren testing positive for coronavirus, I mentioned how it's connected to the Mandela effect, because my original blog post, I had videos before I made this blog, but I had an original blog post about Donald Trump coming out to We Are the Champions on Nelson Mandela's birthday. And it was all linked up to 88 and Elizabeth Warren and Queen Elizabeth. But look at Elizabeth Warren, 219. Also 167, the 39th prime number. She's born on the 173rd day of the year. The Mighty Ducks, 173. South Africa, Omicron, so on. But in this blog post, I mentioned how usually when we get a story about Elizabeth Warren, we also, soon after or the day before, the day of even, we get a story about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. And a lot of times it has to do with a Native American theme, right? Pocahontas and so on. And then, of course, on December 23rd, just a few days later, we get the story about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle sharing their first picture of Lilibet on a holiday card. And their daughter Lily they announced her birth on D-Day, right? Omaha Beach D-Day. Think about this, right? And this same day, we got a story about the Washington football player named DeShazer Everett being involved in a fatal crash. And think about the Washington football team, the Washington Redskins, the Native American theme. And I know that's important further because when I looked up this guy's name in gematria, it's 214, also 243 of the Francis Bacon ciphers, right? And Native American equals 243. This number 214 is humongous with the Prince Harry narrative that goes on. Queen Elizabeth is born on 21/4, like 214. In gematria, and Francis Bacon, Prince Harry's 214, Meghan Markle's 214. They announced that they were having Lily on 214 of 21, and that was a span of 214 days before Prince Harry's birthday even. And in history, 214 is the day that Princess Diana announced that she was pregnant with Prince Harry. And remember the whole Oprah Winfrey stuff, right? That was with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the interview. Oprah Winfrey's birthday is 214 days before Princess Diana died. And I should point out, Princess Diana equals 219 in gematria, 219. So there's something very important to her, but Prince Philip, he got the COVID vaccine a span of 214 days after his birthday, and then he goes on to die, you know. But Prince Harry was born 2 months and 14 days after Princess Diana's birthday, and Princess Diana died 2 months and 14 days before Prince Charles's birthday. It's this humongous number, right? And the royal family does have a lot of connections to the Society of Jesus, right? And that's another reason why I said this guy's name's 191, because it linked up, you know, Society of Jesus 191. The royal family all throughout history, you know, the history of the Jesuits was even related to King Henry VIII and so on. You know, King Henry VIII wanted to get a divorce from Catherine of Aragon, and the Pope wouldn't let him, and it had a lot to do with the sack of Rome and whatnot, because the Pope was scared of Charles V, the Emperor, I believe it is, and that's why he didn't let King Henry VIII get a divorce, supposedly, and because he was like the uncle, or he was a relative of some sort to Catherine of Aragon, and the Pope didn't want to make that guy mad, and that's what led to the Church of England and a whole bunch of other stuff, right? And it's just so obvious that the Catholic Church, it was all like done to make it look like they aren't connected, but really they're connected, right? There's these people are ruling the world, that's for sure, you know, and they do these things by the numbers, but just because I'm connecting the number 191 in this case to Society of Jesus, it doesn't mean that somebody else out there might not have had an experience in their life that's connected to the number 191 in relation to this post, or they might be connecting it to something completely different. You know, maybe they had some experience 191 days before, and it was connected to their uncle whose name equals 191 and a whole lot more. That's the point I'm saying, is that a lot of people are just stopping and not realizing that there's this other piece to this knowledge, right? I agree that the cabal exists, and that, you know, it just seems very obvious they're purposely using these numbers, right? Gavin Newsom saying 56% of people get coronavirus in 8 weeks, which is 56 days, and coronavirus 56, and Gavin Newsom 56, and right? It obviously seems like it's being contrived, right? And I'm like pretty positive it's being contrived. But the point I'm trying to make is that it doesn't always have to mean this. You know, there's other things to pay attention to. And when you really do that, you start to see how everything in the world is actually connected, and everything, you know, although that the cabal exists, it doesn't always have to mean that it's the cabal, you know. Something is guiding you from previous patterns and whatever to make the narrative that you understand, if that makes sense, And, I do connect a lot of things to the Jesuits and so on, but I also keep in the back of my head knowing that it doesn't necessarily mean that it is the Jesuits. It could be something else guiding us to see the Jesuits, right? And possibly that is something that is good and it wants us to expose the Jesuits and so on. I will roll with that, but it just, there's so many things throughout history, such as Abraham Lincoln's letter blaming the Jesuits for the Civil War that he wrote 8 months and 4 days before his birthday. And, Abraham Lincoln equals 84 and Jesuit equals 84. And the Civil War began in the 84th year of the United States of America equals 84. It just seems a little fishy to me. Like, why would he do something like that? And there's just countless examples of this, such as the anti-Masonic party and William Morgan equaling the same as Freemason. He's supposedly going to be exposing the Freemasons, then gets murdered, and then it brings up the anti-Masonic party. And, they've trained us to know a lot of these things through the Da Vinci Code. It's no secret in the truth community that the Jesuits, the Freemasons, the Jews, so on, are a big part. And that makes me think that they're just manipulating us to believe this, and it's really something much greater that is, controlling everything. And they know that we're following this, so they can just keep putting stories in the media over and over and over, connected to these same numbers, and, like, really, who is Dr. Paul Cottrell? Where in the world did Dr. Paul Cottrell even come from while Zach's in Louisiana? He was never in the gematria community ever, been around forever. Who is this guy? And he all of a sudden gets Zach's phone number, starts calling him like crazy while he's in Louisiana, staying at room 201, and in Francis Bacon gematria, Louisiana equals 201, and, Zach Hubbard equals 186. He's staying at the Trim that equals 186, and that is a huge number with, a lot of things I've talked about in relation to how we've been controlled, even within this gematria truth community, such as, All for Truth beginning in December of 2016 with the umbrella logo. Then the umbrella man threatens Zach to watch out for Christmas Eve and a car crashes into his house. Then 186 days later, they take down Zach's first channel on the day leaving 186 days in the year. And he does what is it? He does one more episode, then takes a 2-week break, but he did that other episode on the 186th day of the year. And of course, the umbrella man comes from JFK assassination. They believe it is a guy named Louis Stephen Witt who equals 186, and just Louis Witt equals 186. And the umbrella is a symbol for mind control. So it's like, to me, it seems that there's something bigger manipulating us and wanting us to believe all of these things are to the Jesuits, when in reality, I think that there's something much deeper. And when you take a step back and start looking at it, you'll start to understand what I am saying. And I'm not saying that I'm right, but, there's something bigger. And I'm not denying it could be the Jesuits, right? Like I said, I think that my uncle, he either got murdered by the Jesuits or it's something that wanted me to believe it is the Jesuits, And there was a lot of weird things that went on in that time period too. And, I don't know what I truly think with all that, but, and I recognize that even the way that I'm doing gematria and following these patterns and signs and whatever, it's obviously something guiding me. Maybe that's not something that's good, right? Maybe that's, I recognize that this is going on, at least, though. And I think a lot of people don't recognize this, right? So they just see all these numbers connected to the Jesuits and so on, and that's all they do. They just drop everything and just start believing in this. And while, I do agree, I still have that thing in the back of my mind that says, look at all these other ways that it connects too, right? So there's something more to pay attention to, right? That's the whole point that I'm trying to get across. And there's a lot of people who give me shit about it, and a lot of people who talk crap on me. And, it's just that they just aren't seeing it. They're not understanding this deeper thing. But anyway, let's move on. So, in relation to the Jesuits, this story about Prince Harry, it came 201 days after they announced the birth of Lily too, right? 201 days. And also Archie, her brother, he just so happened to be born on 5/6. And remember, the whole point of me even talking about this was that, Lily was announced born on D-Day, which is important to the Mandela effect stuff that I was talking about with the horse Omaha Beach. And think about D-Day and Omaha Beach and so on. And let me find this old stuff here. When you go back here, look, 2019, when I was talking about all these, I started talking about Omaha Beach and the Mandela effect and so on. Notice that that's when the royal baby Archie was born. And he was born on 5/6. I'm pretty sure I talked about how it was connected to the 2015 narrative with Princess Charlotte being born, and how Princess Charlotte was connected to, the NASCAR symbolism, and that was connected up to the Kentucky Derby stuff, right? 2015 was a huge year. Like, that was a huge year with Michael Jordan stuff, too. That's why I've been following the Chicago Bulls a lot leading up to this year. And then now they're like, second in the conference right now, I think. And, they were like the first team with all the coronavirus stuff going on. Of course, it's all, think about Scottie Pippen's son who died earlier this year. Connected, it was like, what was it, the first day of Taurus, the bull, right? In the year of the ox and the horse, or the bull, right? The ox and the bull, think about it. So, it's just, there was all kinds of stuff with that too, because Nike slayed the bull, and then Kobe Bryant's wife was in the news right around that time, something to do with his Nike contract, right? Nike slayed the bull. Scottie Pippen's son dies, right? Scottie Pippen the bull on the first day of Taurus is when they announced it, during the year of the ox, and the ox, think about ox regards to the bull. So the Chinese tiger, the Chinese years are actually very, very important. Just talked about it a whole lot. So next year's the year of the tiger. You got Tiger King, the guy with Tiger King with cancer. Joe Exotic. But, it's funny too. So in 2019, I also had Synchronicity with the Kentucky Derby. I didn't get to watch the Kentucky Derby because I had to go to Omaha, I think, to a band gig, and it had flooded really bad, and I missed an exit, like on the interstate or something. Let me see here. Can't remember it all. I'm trying to think of it. I was driving down the interstate, and I missed an exit, and I had to go down 30th Street in Omaha to get where I was going so it was like way out of the way. But as I was going down 30th Street, I was thinking about the word Titus, because earlier in the day, my girlfriend had wanted to name our kid that was going to be born in August Titus. And I was like, man, that just doesn't sound like a name that I want to name my kid. I don't know. It just doesn't have a ring to it in my brain. And I was talking about it with the girls at work. And then on the way there, I was like trying to check out to see who won the Kentucky Derby on my phone. I was waiting for it as I was driving down 30th Street, but I was also thinking about Titus and the name of my son or whatever. And right as I was thinking about Titus, I looked over and I saw Titus Avenue. And keep in mind, I never go this way, so I don't even know these roads, right? And it was Titus Avenue. And then I found out that the thing came up, who won the Kentucky Derby, and I found out that it was Country House because maximum security got disqualified, right? And there's a whole nother story with that, because it was synced up to Guantanamo Bay, because that same day we got a plane that skidded off the runway in Florida coming from Guantanamo Bay, a maximum security thing, and then maximum security gets DQ'd, and then Country House wins. But what was funny is that right when I saw that Country House won, and I knew that Country House's jockey was a guy named Flavian Pratt, and he was the original jockey of Omaha Beach. And Omaha Beach got, scratched before the Kentucky Derby even, but Flavian Pratt. And anyway, I just started laughing right when I saw that, and then I looked over, and I was right next to Nelson Mandela Elementary School. And I was like, what are the odds of that? There's a Nelson Mandela Elementary School, like right when I find out who wins the Kentucky Derby, and it just so happens to be Flavian Pratt, the jockey, who wins it on Country House. And anyway, I was looking more into some of the horses, and I noticed that there was another horse in the race called Tacitus. And I looked up Tacitus, and it takes you to this guy who lived during the time of the Flavian dynasty. I don't think it says it on here, but notice this guy died in 120 AD, so 56 to 120 AD. And I can't remember where it's, maybe I put it in here somewhere. But moral of the story, when I looked him up, I found out that here it is right here. He said he owed his rank to the Flavian emperor. So I looked up the Flavian dynasty, and I was like, Flavian, that's interesting, because you just got the winner as Flavian Pratt. You know, it's spelled a little different, but it looks a lot of the same. And it turns out that the Flavian dynasty was actually going on at the time of the Mount Vesuvius eruption. And, this blows my mind, because earlier in the video I said I didn't realize the connection to the volcanoes and horses. And I made this video. I started making this video a few days ago, and I'm just trying to finish it, but it's now like just after midnight on December 31st, but like 51 minutes into it. But it was just mind blown. Like, I just realized this as I was researching more, but think about how this connects. Titus. So Tacitus was around the same time that Titus was the ruler of the Flavian dynasty, and Titus just so happened to be the ruler of Rome or whatever when there was the Mount Vesuvius eruption, right? The famous Mount Vesuvius eruption. And he's also the ruler who destroyed the Second Temple in Jerusalem. And in 2019, the same year of this whole narrative, the biggest thing that was going on was that we were following the connections to Tisha B'Av, which is the feast day that remembers the destruction of the two temples in history that both got destroyed on the 11th month of the 9th day of the 11th month on the Hebrew civil calendar. And Tisha B'Av in the Jewish gematria equals 911. Think about the two towers on 9/11, and so on. So, just think of how that is intertwined here. This Flavian Pratt wins the Kentucky Derby, and there's also a horse named Tacitus, and he lived during the time of the Flavian dynasty, and during the time of Titus, who was one of the people in the Flavian dynasty, during the time of Tacitus, we got the Mount Vesuvius eruption. And remember, the word horse equals 129, right? So the volcano symbolism, horse symbolism, it all comes together here with that Mount Vesuvius that I forgot all about. How Mount Vesuvius was linked up to Titus and Tacitus, and it's just unbelievable, And it's interesting, horse also equals 29, because in this thing where I'm talking about it all, if I could find it here, in my synchronicity, so I was going to Omaha, and somehow the road construction or whatever, I missed an exit or something, and I had to take the North Omaha exit and go down 30th Street, but I was actually going down Interstate 29 when all of this happened. So, I saw Titus Avenue, and then I look over and I see Nelson Mandela Elementary, right as I'm learning about the Kentucky Derby. But it's interesting, horse is 29, and I was going down Interstate 29 as well. There's just, so many things that were going on around this time. This is 2020, or this is 2019, but we also had that, like I said, that plane that skidded off the runway going from Guantanamo Bay, or coming from Guantanamo Bay, and then we have maximum security win, maximum security Guantanamo Bay. Of course, Cal Penn, the actor, and Harold and Kumar, who have a movie called Escape from Guantanamo Bay, was important. He was on The Big Bang Theory, around that same time. He's really not on that many episodes. He was on The Big Bang Theory. And the big thing I was following was, The Big Bang Theory and the date 516 with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I also got that YouTube strike that lasted until 516, synced up to The Breakfast Club, that had Emilio Estevez and also Molly Ringwald, who's also in Pretty in Pink. And in Pretty in Pink, her best friend is named Ducky. And I'll explain why this is important. It really is coming, but the duck theme is interrelated. And that's why, Brian May recently getting coronavirus was linked up to this. The We Are the Champions was on the movie The Mighty Ducks 2. And that's also a Mandela thing. But Nelson Mandela also was the president of South Africa for 5 years, 1 month, and 6 days. And, that's why we recently had the story of Cal Penn coming out as gay at the same time that we had the story of Buffy the Vampire Slayer getting coronavirus, because it's all linked up to this same narrative. And then all of a sudden after that, we got the death of the South African FW day clerk, and it's synced up to the Mighty Ducks, and it's synced up to Omicron, and it's synced up to South Africa, and it's synced up to this narrative that I've been following for years, But let's go to 2020 really quick, because I want to explain the duck theme. I'll probably end the video, but 2020, and we'll just start with maybe May or June. Where in the world am I going here? 2020 April. How about that? So 2020 in April, right around the same time, right? This is April 27th. I noticed a story about Duck Dynasty in the news. And whatever, that it was about this guy from Duck Dynasty, and they were going to do a drive-by shooting. And this guy had the same birthday. The guy was going to try to kill him. He had the same birthday as me, which I thought was interesting. And then I noticed that the story came 5 months and 16 days after my birthday, right? This big thing syncing up to the Big Bang Theory and whatever that I was following in 2019. And anyway, moral of the story is, as I was looking at the stories here, I also noticed another story right above it about Miley Cyrus on Saturday Night Live. And in 2019, a big thing with the duck theme had to do with Saturday Night Live. I was at my friend Cody's house, and it was right after Nipsey Hussle died, and I was telling him all about Nipsey Hussle being coded and so on. And then I went on to start talking about the duck theme that I've been talking about for years, and that the duck theme was just like stupidly big, right? And it all involved the Mighty Ducks or whatever. I was going on for like 20 minutes telling my friend about this duck theme, and then I go up to go pee, and I'm in the bathroom and I hear him going, no way, that's some crazy stuff. And I come out and I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, well, when you went to pee, I looked up at the TV and Jimmy Fallon's on, and Gordon Bombay walks out on stage. And he's like, that's the coach of the Mighty Ducks. You just told me about the Mighty Ducks for like 20 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, see, this stuff happens all the time and whatever. And I came home and I looked all that stuff up, and like, I can't remember it all. I think Jimmy Fallon equals 516 or something. And maybe it was 5 months and 16 days before his birthday. And it was actually to celebrate Alec Baldwin's birthday. And Emilio Estevez wasn't actually the important person on there, but he had come out to celebrate Alec Baldwin's birthday. Maybe, I can't remember what cipher it is. Maybe I don't even know. Maybe it was a Sumerian cipher. Alec Baldwin equal 516. Yeah. The Sumerian cipher, Alec Baldwin equaled 516. I think Jimmy Fallon did too. Or it was something with Jimmy Fallon in 516. I think it was 5 months and 16 days before his birthday and whatever, but Alec Baldwin equaled 516. I was like, man, that has to be related, right? So you can see why I thought that when I see the story about Duck Dynasty right next to Miley Cyrus on Saturday Night Live, it might be important. So I look at the story with Miley Cyrus, and what else was interesting is that, I had just was writing in my book about this whole 2019 stuff with Alec Baldwin, and oh, here it is right here. It was 5 months, 16 days before Jimmy Fallon's birthday, Alec Baldwin 516. In 2018, I also had this synchronicity with Will Ferrell and the movie Step Brothers, and there's another guy I know named John C., or it looks like John C. Riley, and his name equals 516, and John C. Riley equals 516. So, I was writing in the book that I have, and I wrote all this stuff about the duck boat drowning and whatever, and then all of a sudden we get the story about the Duck Dynasty, and then we get a story about Miley Cyrus and Saturday Night Live. So I was like, there has to be, some type of connection. And Miley Cyrus also was singing a Pink Floyd song. And let me just explain the duck stuff. Because it'll make more sense why Miley Cyrus is singing a Pink Floyd song, because the color pink was really important to this duck theme. So clear back in December of 2017, I was listening to one of Zach's videos, and he was playing a clip of Alex Jones on that video, but my cat was on my lap, and I got up to go pee, and my cat got mad because he was sitting on my lap, and he wanted to sit on my lap. And when I came back, I sat down, and I patted my leg, and I told my cat, "There you go," so he could sit down on my lap again. And right as I said, "There you go," Alex Jones on the video that Zach was playing said, "There you go." And I was like, that's some crazy synchronicity, right? I didn't know exactly what it meant. And then like a day later or a few days later, Netflix showed me the movie The Number 23. And I was like, oh, I haven't seen that movie forever. So I watched that movie. And I noticed he does the crazy gematria of the color pink. And also in that movie, there's he writes a book, and he has like a pseudonym called Fingerling, right? That just, if you go watch the movie, Fingerling is really important, and he does the gematria of the color pink. And around that same time, I had found out that my daughter wanted this toy that was really famous called a Fingerling, and they were really hard to find for Christmas and whatever. And then I found out it was called a Fingerling, and I looked up Fingerling, and I found out Fingerling has something to do with pinky finger and something to do with the color pink. So I looked up Pink the singer, thinking maybe that was something important. And then, of course, Pink the singer, her first single, or first major hit, was called There You Go. And I was like, that has to be related, right? There You Go, Alex Jones. And I was following this big narrative with the national anthem in the Super Bowl, and I thought that Pink would probably sing the national anthem at the Super Bowl because it was held in Minneapolis, and she had ties to Minneapolis and Philadelphia. And of course, a month later, they announced Pink to sing the national anthem at the Super Bowl. And then later that year, like in May, my friend Sam had blogged about this duck synchronicity he had at the dollar store. He went in to the dollar store, and it was raining, and this guy said, "It's a nice day if you're a duck." And then when Sam was done, he went outside, and I might be mixing this up, but he went outside and he looked at a puddle, and there was a toy duck floating in the puddle. And he had also just recently watched Saturday Night Live with Will Ferrell saying something about the Chinese buffet and the duck sauce. And what was interesting about that same day I watched The Mighty Ducks. And I, again, for whatever reason, the only movie I watched, just randomly rewatched The Mighty Ducks. I was like, that's crazy. There's some synchronicity going on with duck. And then a couple months later, we had like XXX Tentacion's relative drowned in a pool in Jamaica. Then I had some synchronicity with Chigozie Truth and the band Drowning Pool. And then we had the death of the Philadelphia Flyers goalie named Roy Emery, who drowned. And I said, that reminds me of Goldberg the goalie from the movie The Mighty Ducks, because he says he's going to move back to Philly, and he never does in the movie. But of course he's the goalie, and Philadelphia Flyers, Philly. And I was like, I wonder if we're going to get some type of Mighty Ducks story in relation to drowning. And then the next day we got the Branson, Missouri duck boat drowning. And it just happened to be 39 days before Goldberg the goalie's birthday. And he was 39 years old at the time. And then I realized the other synchronicity I had with Sam was 3 months and 9 days before Goldberg the goalie's birthday. And the word duck equals 39. And Goldberg the goalie's real name is Sean Weiss, and Sean Weiss equals 39. So I was like, interesting. And I was kind of following that. 2 weeks after the duck boat drowning in Branson, Missouri on August 6th of 2018, we got a story about Goldberg the goalie getting arrested. The same day we got a story about Alex Jones getting kicked off of Twitter. And the same day we got a story about Pink the singer canceling one of her shows in Australia. And Pink was also important around that time because of Molly Tibbetts. And Molly Tibbetts had a pinned thing on her Twitter about how a cop followed her because she was wearing a pink shirt and they thought she was a missing 10-year-old or something. And then, you know, she ends up dying like later that month and goes missing. And she was synced to the Iowa Hawkeyes who paint their locker rooms, their visitor locker rooms pink. But, moral of the story, I started thinking about Molly Ringwald, who's in Pretty in Pink. And I looked up Pretty in Pink, just thinking it might be an important movie. And the writer or the creator is John Hughes, who died on August 6th, which is the 218th day of the year. And he was also born on 2/18. And Molly Ringwald was also born on 2/18. And she's also in The Breakfast Club with Gordon Bombay, right, from the Mighty Ducks, Emilio Estevez. And I watched the movie Pretty in Pink, and her best friend in the movie just so happens to be named Ducky. And I was like, man, there's some crazy connection to Duck and Pink and Alex Jones. So then I looked up John Hughes some more, and I noticed that the final film that John Hughes, or I don't know if this is his final film, I looked up Goldberg the goalie, and the final movie that he has been in was, hold on, I can't think of what it's called. It's a movie called Drill Bit Taylor. I looked up Drill Bit Taylor, he's the bus driver, but it just so happens to be a movie by John Hughes, his final film work before his death in 2009. And I thought, what the hell? So Goldberg the goalie's even synced up to John Hughes, right, who wrote Pretty in Pink, and the whole movie is about this guy who gets his pinky fingers chopped off, right? It's like, what? So I knew there was something even more important, because at the very end of the movie, Owen Wilson gets his pinky finger chopped off. So, you know, there was this big old narrative, and then on 1/29, I think even, of 2019, Goldberg the goalie was back in the news or whatever. I think he got arrested again. And right around the same time, we had the story about Jussie Smollett. And then on 2/15, we found out that Jussie Smollett actually orchestrated his own attack, or that was the thing. And we got a story about the Aurora duck boat crash the duck boat crash that happened on the Aurora Bridge in Seattle in 2015. And I was like, what are the odds we're getting a story about this again from 2015 and it's 2019? And we also had that Aurora, Illinois shooting. There was a shooting, and one of the main victims, they talked about her name was Tara Pinkard, and a bunch of stuff, right? I knew all of the stuff was related to Jussie Smollett. His first movie was in the Mighty Ducks. So there was just this big relationship, right, with Pink, Duck, drowning. There was all of these different things that all came together just the weirdest way, you know. And I knew they were all related. So hopefully it makes sense when I'm talking about Miley Cyrus singing the Pink Floyd song, and she synced it to Saturday Night Live. And, you know, the day I got that strike too, the same day Jussie Smollett was on the news, and the same day we got the Aurora, Illinois shooting, that was 2/15, and Saturday Night Live equals 215, and isn't that the day Chris Farley was born, and a whole bunch of stuff, you know, but yeah, Saturday Night Live equals 215. So I knew there was something important to why Miley Cyrus was in this news, and her birthday is also the exact same day that my girlfriend was born, so I was like, that made it stand out even more. And I had just been writing about the duck theme in the book that I was writing and so on, and I was like, that, you know, this is in 2020, and I just wrote all about this stuff. Emilio Estevez connected to Molly Ringwald and Pretty in Pink, and my strike came because of a clip that I used from the movie The Breakfast Club that Emilio Estevez is in with Molly Ringwald. But the very next day after this, one of the stories of the news just so happened to be a story about the duck boat drowning in Branson, Missouri. It's like, so now we're getting a story about the duck boat drowning just after we get a story about the guy from Duck Dynasty, and then we get a Miley Cyrus story synced up to Saturday Night Live and The Color Pink, and all these related things, right? And then we get a story about the duck boat drowning again. And I wrote more in the book, right? I wrote about the Mandela effect and stuff, and it's interesting. I see a 219 there, but so it was April 29th then when I wrote this on like after midnight, but it was April 29th. I was at work, and the night before I had wrote all this stuff that I just talked about, Titus and Kentucky Derby and the Mandela effect. And towards the end of the day, my boss, she came up to the whole time I wrote all this in the book, and I was trying to figure out how I could place Donald Trump and We Are the Champions in relation to the Mandela effect, right? I was trying to figure out how I could fit that in because I feel like talking about that would, a lot of people are all about Donald Trump and so on, right? So I was like, that would be really good to fit in here with the Mandela effect theme, but I couldn't figure out how I could do it. And I was rereading what I had wrote in the book, and my boss, she came up and she was randomly singing We Are the Champions. And I was like, why are you singing We Are the Champions? And she's like, I don't know, I just am. And I'm like, you don't want to know how crazy this is, because I'm just looking at my thing, trying to figure out how I could talk about We Are the Champions in my book when I start writing again tonight. And here you are singing about We Are the Champions, singing We Are the Champions. And she rarely ever even buys anything at the store. So it was even more odd that she was buying something. But her total ended up coming to 516. And I was like, gee, you got to be kidding me. That's a humongous number with this whole theme that I'm talking about. And now you're saying We Are the Champions and your total comes to 516. And let's see here. And then told her I was just thinking about that song, the number 516, and her total was 516. But she didn't really care about the synchronicity or whatever, I was just trying to fit all this into the book. And then she's singing that song and her total comes to 516. So later when I got home, I figured I would look up people who were born on 516. And I saw this one guy named Chris Duckworth. And I thought that was interesting. He was from South Africa. And I was like, Nelson Mandela, South Africa, Chris Duckworth, right? And then I noticed in the English Extended, maybe it's not. Let's see here. I'm just trying to remember all this stuff. Born in 516. He's from South Africa. The other night I also noticed that the actor who plays Mr. Ducksworth on the Mighty Ducks is Joseph Summers, whose name equals 516 in the English Extended cipher. So, interesting. Mr. Ducksworth has a connection to 516. This guy, born from South Africa, born on 516, named Chris Duckworth. And I wrote, I wonder if there's something important to South Africa coming up. Elon Musk's birthday was really important. But we did get a story about Elon Musk right after that in 2020, right? Because he wouldn't shut down Tesla. There's a whole bunch of them. He had a baby. We'll just look at him here really quick, just to prove my point that Elon Musk was important in the news right after this. But he had a baby, and he was threatening to move Tesla, something to do with coronavirus, right? But Elon Musk was in the news like crazy, and I pointed out South Africa's connection to the Mighty Ducks. And while I was writing this blog post up, I heard the TV say duck, and I looked up and my kid was watching Peppa Pig, and there's a duck on there. It was something to do with a rubber duck. And then my girlfriend called me a few minutes later, and she took my SUV to Council Bluffs, and it started smoking in the Wendy's parking lot that I talked about with the... That's how I knew there was something important to Wendy's with the whole George Floyd stuff when they were doing the protests. And then they burnt down a Wendy's the very next day in Atlanta over the Richard Brooks stuff. They burnt down a Wendy's after I said that Wendy's was really important to the whole narrative, and how Colin Kaepernick originally knelt on the same day that there was the Wendy's cop shooting from the TV show Cops. There was a shooting in Omaha at the Wendy's, and I had synchronicity at that same Wendy's even with the twin symbolism, and think about George Floyd, and he was all linked up to the twin symbolism, and Wendy's is owned by Dave Thomas, and Thomas means twins. So what are the odds then we get the Wendy's in Atlanta burning down right after that? But it was all linked up to my SUV breaking down too, but anyway, whatever, I couldn't go get her. I didn't have another car, and her sister ended up went and picked her up and whatever, and we just left it there. I was going to see if my dad could help me look at the car. It turned out just to be the fan was broke, or the fan came unplugged or something weird like that. And you just had to plug the fan back in, and then it didn't overheat. But moral of the story, they came home, and I was just kind of still making this blog post, and my daughter all of a sudden goes, she had some clay. I didn't even know she was even making this, but she got some clay, and she's like, "Look, Dan, I made a duck or an egg or something." And then, yeah, so she made this. And I was like, "You're making that right now while I'm blogging about the duck theme, and I just hear the word duck on TV right before you guys get home?" It's like, what are the odds? I knew there was something important to ducks and so on. So I looked more into that. The Mighty Ducks. The Mighty Ducks were actually originally called, in other countries, the movie was actually just called Champions. Think about We Are the Champions, and then on the second one, they sing the song We Are the Champions. So then, later that day, I noticed that the Kentucky Derby got rescheduled to 9/5, and I was like, that's that big connection to Mandela effect, right? Mandela effect 95, Nelson Mandela, age 95. And that's when I noticed all these 516s, the Nelson Mandela. I noticed that the South African current president, his name's 225, like Nelson Mandela's full name. Mandela died 225 days after his birthday. It's all kinds of stuff. And as I was researching more about Nelson Mandela, I just typed in Nelson Mandela, and apparently on April 29th, this guy, a guy who went to jail with Nelson Mandela, he died. But notice his name, Dennis Goldberg, right? Think about how that relates to the duck theme, right? Dennis Goldberg. And his name's 173, like the Mighty Ducks, like South Africa. So, hopefully this makes sense. But that's how I knew that there was an important theme to ducks and the Mandela effect and how it's all related. And the whole point I was getting at with all this is that just after this, then we had let's see here. There was a story about, I wondered if it was important to We Are the Champions, right? Because of Queen. And then we got two stories about Brian May of Queen. If I can find these things here. I just saw it. Where did it go? Yeah, Brian May of Queen was hospitalized. And they had just recently remade the song We Are the Champions with Adam Lambert. But Brian May in the news, right after I have all this We Are the Champions, synchronicity. His name's 52. He injured his gluteus maximus, it said in an article, while he was gardening 52, Brian May 52, gluteus maximus 52. And I was looking at it, Freddie Mercury's birthday 9/5, Kentucky Derby moved to 9/5. The film Bohemian Rhapsody was really important to that 2019 Tisha B'Av narrative. Talked about with Slipknot and a bunch of stuff, how it was all related to the Third Temple and Zion. And then during Tisha B'Av, the Slipknot concert in Zion, Illinois, a person died at the concert during Tisha B'Av on, Zion, Illinois. What are the odds, But the film Bohemian Rhapsody is about Freddie Mercury's life up to the Live Aid concert, And that concert was about Ethiopia, and it was set up by Bob Geldof, who is the guy named Pink in Pink Floyd's The Wall. So there's just a whole lot that goes along with it, but I pointed out that Adam Lambert and Brian May's birthdays are 173 days apart. The Mighty Ducks 173. I know we got one more story about Brian May around this time too, I thought. But I even watched the movie called The Mandela Effect on Hulu. And in the background of the movie, they got this eyeball right here, you know. It's just kind of funny. They don't ever, like, really make it seem like it's a conspiracy theory in the movie, but, you know, it's just funny. They put this eyeball in the background of the movie. There was also, I mean, there's just so many things going on around that time. The latest episode of The Goldbergs was called Pretty in Pink. And then, oh, Brian May had a heart attack. That's what it was. But he's 72 years old, had a heart attack. Think about The Goldbergs. Notice the title of the last Goldbergs episode came out, Pretty in Pink. They even referenced Ducky multiple times in this episode. Remember, this show was important to what I was documenting about in season 6, too. The first episode was 16 Candles. Another Molly Ringwald film, Mr. Knifey Hands, was about Freddy Krueger, who was important to the Queen theme. And also, they had one called Bohemian Rhapsody. And this was around the same time that they announced that Slipknot was going to be performing at the Iowa State Fair for the first time, the same day that the film Bohemian Rhapsody came out. And I'm pretty sure that Bohemian Rhapsody even equals 516. Can't even type here, but yeah, Bohemian Rhapsody also equals 516 and 173. So, and 225, all these numbers. So, and that's a big narrative I've followed for years with Kanye West and Queen and Freddy Krueger. And I mean, it's deep because when Freddie Gray died in 2015, I showed how there was this big narrative synced up to the movie Freddy's Dead and also the movie Drop Dead Fred. And the same year that both of them movies came out is the same year that Freddie Mercury died. So they have Drop Dead Fred, and then they have Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, Freddy Krueger, and then Freddie Mercury died in November that year. And I talked about how that was all synced up to the VMAs in 2015. And then the same day as the VMAs, Wes Craven died, the guy who created the Freddy Krueger movies. And it all had to do with Kanye singing Bohemian Rhapsody in Glastonbury, synced up to Slipknot. So, I really think it's all related to August 6th. There's just something very important. And August 6th is August 6th and August 7th this year is when Tisha B'Av falls, which is the 218th day and the 219th day. And I keep seeing all of the stuff with 219 that's, you know, it's important to 219, but it all seems to stem back to this August 6th, the narrative that I'm following with Tisha B'Av and so on. And there just seems to be something very important to that date. It's linked up to the Tiger Year, it's linked up to the moon, it's linked up to 9/11, you know. Think about, you know, Tisha B'Av falling on that day, and the 200, that's the day that World Trade Center construction began, and it was in the year 68. It was 218th day, Osama bin Laden equals 218. The World Trade Center equals 218. Just keep your eye out for some of these things. I guess the whole moral of the story, I had to come back and look at some of this stuff, is just because I want you to understand some of these why the Mandela effect theme that I'm talking about is important. Michael Nesmith writing the movie that's synced up to by, Time Rider or whatever. There's a whole bunch of other things that are going on, but in relation to 219, Zach's name also equals 219. That's why Ukraine is pretty big. Ukraine has their coat of arms is the trident, but Ukraine subs the 219. That's why Joe Biden and Russia have been in the news a lot lately. The Matrix opens up with 219. Just trying to look through here. LeBron James tests positive for coronavirus. Those all synced up to the Queen and King symbolism in China and the Tisha B'Av narrative. But video's long enough. Who knows? I just want to. I just have synchronicity just nonstop. I talked about that lady who died in Denison. Well, tonight I went back to get a Chile, Colorado, and I was like, I wonder if there's going to be a different person on the door. It's kind of weird that that lady was still on there in December, and she died in October. So it's like, I bet she's still just going to be up on the door. But I walked in and hers was gone, and now there's this new lady on there, and she died on Pope Francis's birthday. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And of course, her name equals 56, just like Pope, just like Marcia Pope. And her name, Frances Bacon, equals 319. She died 319 days after her birthday. 319 was that big day with the volcano symbolism. And in my post right before this, I talked about Houston tumbling and stuff. I got a spammed comment on a NASCAR post, and I even wrote how I was going to leave and go to El Jimador, but it was linked up to this horse symbolism and so on. I won't go into it, but just reminds me of the volcano symbolism that Iceland volcano happened on 319 last year. And anyway, I get my food and I come home, and I just turned on this Slotomania game just to kill some time while I was going to eat my food, and my kids were watching Scooby-Doo or something. And I noticed that I just turned on this chili pepper game because the last time I played it, it's like a casino game, and the last time I played it, I lost all my money or whatever on there, and I was like, well, if I go back to it, usually it only takes so many spins, and then maybe I'll hit the bonus game on it or something. So I just went back to this game and started playing it, or just I turned it on, and then I opened up my bag of food, and I noticed they gave me like silverware, and it was like wrapped up in a napkin with this little thing taped around it, chili peppers, and they literally never give you. Usually they just give you like a fork that's not even in the wrapper, it's just inside the bag. I've been there a million times, I've never got this. So it's weird that I turned on this chili pepper game, and then this thing's wrapped in chili peppers, and I start telling my family, and my daughter looks over and she goes, what's even weirder? On Scooby-Doo, just a second ago, they were showing chili peppers on the screen. And apparently it was this, I don't know if I put a thing in here. It was Scooby-Doo, something on Zombie Island. I think it's called Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. And literally the whole thing involves how they go to a pepper plantation. And it's really hard to see, but these are like red hot chili peppers, and try taking a picture of it. It was just like, what are the odds? I turn this on with chili peppers, and I open up my food. It's got a thing with chili peppers on it, and then my daughter tells me that we're watching something on TV that involves chili peppers. It just makes me think there's something important to the red hot chili peppers. And I talked about some stuff that I talked about a few years ago or whatever with Charlie Manson, and how Charlie Manson equals 219. It's a big rose theme, and so does Nirvana. Nirvana equals 219. And earlier today at work, an older guy, he's like 10 years older than me, but he showed me something on Facebook where there's like a stack of cassettes, and It showed all of them albums came out like the same year or within a year or something. And it had like Nirvana, Nevermind, and I think Metallica Black Album, and I can't remember them all, but there was like 8 of them. And I'm pretty sure that this Red Hot Chili Peppers album was one of them. And I looked it up, and it came out the same day that Nevermind came out, so it's probably in there. But notice how it has all the roses on it, and that Charles Manson narrative that was linked up to Jack Sherman dying was all about a rose theme, so just makes me wonder. So plus then, you got the whole Giselle Maxwell getting 5 of 6 counts, right? 56, Society of Jesus, right? They're doing that on purpose, but now they're talking about Prince Andrew, right? And when I was talking about all this stuff, we talked about how Prince Andrew was born on 2/19, so we'll see where that takes us, but just happens all day, every day. It's not just some. I just don't think people understand that about, this knowledge. There's certain people who just don't get it. It's like, I don't know why I even worry about it, but dude, this doesn't just happen every now and then. This happens like all of the time, so we'll leave it at that. Like I said, the video's way too long. I got to make them in 15-minute segments right now until I get a different program again to make videos. So have a good one. Peace.